So welcome back, everybody, to the news. Thanks for joining us, KrakCast.pl, our website, all of our back episodes there. You know, I forgot to mention last week, a big thanks to everybody who
listened.
Well, not only that, but who contributed comments to our discussion about supermarket nightmares that we published about 2 weeks ago. It's funny, we often have this discussion here at KrakCast headquarters. We have no idea how episodes are going to be received, like things that we think are going to get a good response maybe don't, things that we have no expectations for do well, and that was the case with the supermarket thing. It seems that we tapped into a deep vein of anger and frustration about supermarkets, Dr. Mike.
That is true. It's like usually the episodes where we do a lot of research and planning and thinking. You guys
Which happens sometimes.
You don't give a rat's ass. Yeah, but the episodes were like, okay, wait, we need to do something. We need some filler. Supermarkets. All right, good. Let's just throw it out there. It's like...
And then I have to get this off my chest, just like I had to get a lot of things off my chest during that episode. The reason I mention this is because a couple of days ago, I almost called you, Dr. Mike, to ask what I should do to prevent the heart attack I was going to have. Here's the situation. I'm behind this woman in the checkout line. The classic mistake of not weighing her vegetables and getting the little sticker, right? So she doesn't do it. Now, I know some places you do it in the vegetable department, some places you do it at the checkout. Okay, whatever, maybe not her fault. But anyway, instead of doing the right thing, which was saying, you know what, never mind, to the cashier when asked, you know, when she realized, she goes, you know what, wait just a second. She takes, I think it was an onion or something. She disappears to the back of the supermarket, comes back 3 minutes later or whatever with the proper sticker. She gives it to the cashier. Then she stands there and watches as, you know, item by item, the rest of her stuff goes, you know, beep, beep, beep. She's just standing there watching, not bagging anything, which is what she should have been doing. And then the cashier tells her how much. And then what does she do then? Oh, well, then now it's time to reach deep into her purse or her bag and search for her wallet, adding another minute or so. And then she decides to bag everything. And this is when I was just about to call you to see what I could do about the heart attack I was going to have. It never ends, Dr. Mike. It never ends. Every time I go to the supermarket, I have some kind of, I don't know, episode.
I don't think it's heart attacks we need to be worried about, but more like murder scenes. It's like, it's like, oh, I was buying a knife and
one day
I have a reason to use it.
I've said it before. If you ever see me in the news, it's going to be because I went psycho at Lidl because the people in front of me were making me crazy. Anyway, let's get into the news here. Let me start with a math question for you, Dr. Mike. Are you good at math?
Generally speaking.
All right. Here's a math question. The government this week says 6 million people are fully vaccinated against COVID now in Poland. However, at the same time, 20 million people have had some kind of vaccination. How is it that only 6 million out of 20 million are fully vaccinated?
Oh, those are the ones that have gotten the double shot.
Yeah, I get that, but that seems like really low to me, you know?
Well, 6 million, that still means like 12 million shots, not counting the Johnson & Johnson, which just makes the math a little more complicated in that sense. But then you have to consider the fact that a lot of people that are naturally immunized as well that were, got COVID during that time.
They're not counted in it, though, are they?
The thing is, that just makes the math more complicated because there was a while when the government said, like, if you had COVID, you cannot sign up for the vaccination for several months. But they changed that rule last month now that if you had COVID, you can get the vaccination within 1 month of that. And I don't understand somebody who got COVID, why they want the vaccination at all, because, well, they're just...
I mean, it's bizarre. I mean,
incoming passports.
I mean, I don't know that many people...
For holidays and...
I don't know that many people here who've actually had it or been sick with it. But the weird thing is, all of the people I know that claim to have had it have also now been vaccinated.
Yes, I also, one of the few people I know that have had it have also been vaccinated, which makes...
Same. I don't get it. Is there a point to that?
From a vaccination immunological standpoint, it's debatable. The immunity you get from having a disease is a little bit different than from having the vaccination, and especially if it's an mRNA vaccination, we're talking about, like, say, antibody production and then T-cell memory immunity. It's different, but the thing is, these vaccines are very new, and we still don't exactly know what they will look like in a year or 2 or 3.
So we don't know if it's different, better, or different, worse.
Or different at all. It's still, we're still going to see. But the thing is, since there were a limited amount of vaccinations, I would assume that first make sure that people who have not had COVID are vaccinated first before people who have already had COVID are getting vaccinated. To
your knowledge, Dr. Mike, either in Poland or anywhere, is the situation of somebody getting the first of 2 vaccinations, they get the first shot, and then for whatever reason they don't get the second one, is that a thing? Does that happen? Or to any statistically significant degree does that happen?
Apparently, it has been happening not only in Poland but in the U.S. as well, and other European countries, where after a couple of weeks they don't show up for the second shot. And we're not talking like 50, 60%, but it's still 5, 10, 15%. That's enough. That it's statistically significant.
Well, you think people have second thoughts about this, or bad reactions,
They
or
just don't care.
Or they forget.
What do you forget though? I mean,
You don't write it in your diary and you forget.
Maybe.
It's a hassle to go out there and get the vaccination.
It's raining, it's cold, it's windy.
Well, anyway, once again in Poland, 6 million people fully vaccinated, 20 million people vaccinated to some degree. So I guess that means 12 million people with one shot. I mean, is that the right way to break these numbers down?
The way they present those numbers is actually quite confusing.
20 minus 6 is 14. So 14 million people with one shot?
It's somewhere along those lines, exactly. Plus,
That makes no sense to me.
when you realize the fact that, I think officially in Poland about 2-3 million people have had COVID, but most studies suggest that it's been 2 or 3 times more at least that have had COVID besides that. So natural immunity is somewhere along the lines of 6 to 10 million. So at least a good half the population, if not more, is already to some extent immune.
Very quick sidebar to this discussion about vaccinations, Dr. Mike. Let's take advantage of your medical background here. Is there a reason why some shots are in the arm and some are in the ass?
Sorry.
It just depends.
Preference.
I just, the doctor, he wanted to see her ass, I guess. But it's
Asking for a friend.
intramuscular, basically. It's, for instance, I know in Poland there were some vaccinations, like childhood vaccinations, were more often done in the rear, especially like TB and stuff like that. So the scar would be covered up. But in other countries, the TB shot was done in the arm, so it would be more visible because it causes indentation. So it's easier to see if somebody had the TB shot done before. But generally speaking, it's in the arm. It's just more comfortable and stuff like that. So if you're being asked to take your pants off for this shot, you should be flattered.
Reminds me of that
Why exactly? Just do it.
that Roman general Gluteus Maximus. Yeah.
Yeah.
Time for the bad jokes. Okay, that's a sign to move on. Let's go on to a survey. The results from a survey published by Lewica, the political party Lewica, the leftists, in other words. So keep that in mind if you think that might have some bearing on where they got this number from. Anyway, according to Lewica, in Krakow high schools, about 50%, half of all high school students do not take part in religion classes. Now, religion classes, if I'm not mistaken, are compulsory for certain schools and certain grades, voluntary, optional for others. Of course, I think in all high schools, apart from church-run high schools, I think all high schools it's optional. Only 50% of kids volunteer to go to religion schools. What does this number mean? Or what are we supposed to take away from this?
It is interesting because generally Poland is shown to be a religious Catholic nation, but these numbers have been going straight down lately. The what's it called? The teaching of religion was not mandatory for years. But the church had kind of had deals where, it would be available in schools. So, your Sunday school wouldn't be on Sundays; it would be in school.
Available, not mandatory.
Exactly. It wouldn't be part of the. It's no longer part of the grade. It's not averaged in for your grade unless you sign up for it. And in other schools and programs have decided that instead of being taught religion, you're being taught ethics. But still, kids are not showing up, and the question is, is this a sign of the change in the culture? Where it's huge numbers that have dropped basically right now, which is supposed to be.
Okay, Gabby really wants to get in on this. So go ahead.
I do. It's interesting, isn't it? The reason I want to get involved is because a little known fact about me is that when I was younger, I went to 2 Catholic schools, primary and secondary. The first one was
At the same time.
normal Catholic school. The second one was a Catholic school that was run by nuns. And I was taught religion by nuns. And I can tell you, there's nothing more to turn you off religion than being taught dogmatic stuff, let's put it that way, by nuns. And I know...
What did you expect? They're nuns. What did you expect them to teach?
I didn't enroll myself into
You expected them to teach,
and to be
how to
honest,
use a dildo properly and three ways and
actually,
cross-dressing. What did you expect from nuns?
Well, it's quite interesting, though, isn't it? Because the British curriculum actually is quite okay when it comes to religion because you don't just learn about Catholicism, do you? You learn about...
Well, because it's a Protestant country.
It's a Protestant country, but also it's a religious class. So you learn about Buddhism, you learn about Islam, you learn about the smaller religions as well. what worship is, how it works. I'm not sure that happens in religious class in Poland. From what I hear from my students, it's pretty much exactly what went on in my school, which is like dogma, dogma, dogma. You go to the priest, you go to the nuns, and by the time you're 14, you're sick of it, you're not interested anymore.
I mean, I can compare this to what I had in Australia. In Australia, we also had like religion in school Thursday mornings, I believe. At first, they sent me to the Hebrew Jewish classes. Then they realized I wasn't Jewish.
What?
Yeah, this is like a story in our family because the school I went to in Australia, for some reason they thought I was Jewish. So like the first few weeks, I was going to the Jewish class.
Why did they think that?
Lots of complicated reasons.
Did they ever think to maybe ask you or ask your parents? Or?
This is a podcast, I guess, so it's hard to explain. But yeah,
okay,
and then like my parents, like after a few weeks, I'm coming back from school, I'm talking these weird things. Like they call the school like, no,
speaking
he's not
Yiddish.
Jewish. He's Christian. They're like, oh, okay. So the same as the Christian class, which turns out to be the Anglican class. So after like 2 or 3 weeks of that, then they finally like my parents realized, no, he's not Anglican. He's Catholic. And in my school, like,
Jesus Christ, mate,
like
make your bloody mind up.
3 of them were Orthodox Greek, and we just, so I as a 9-year-old, I was kind of like pissed off because like all my friends were in the Jewish class or the Anglican class, and I was hanging out with like the nun and the 3 other Catholic kids in that school. I didn't understand religion at that age or whatever, but it was just weird. I was like, I want to go hang out with my friends.
So you're not going to get indoctrinated with birth control propaganda.
No, there was talk about Christ, and I remember I was really jealous because like she asked some questions, and one of the other kids got the questions right and got a little glow in the dark cross or something like that. When you're 8 or 9, anything that glow in the dark was like
pretty
the
cool.
coolest thing in the world. Exactly.
Sign me up.
Yeah, exactly. So going back to Poland, while I can still remember what I was thinking, it's actually like, isn't it? Well, it's actually. I forgot what I was thinking. Thanks. All right.
Okay, I'll take over. You think about it. Here's my takeaway from this number. I think 50% is high.
It is high.
Think about it.
Is it surprising?
Think about it. We're talking, 16, 17, 18, 19 years old. 50% of kids say, yeah, I will go to religion class. Now, we don't know how many of them are taking it for the easy grade. Maybe you can sleep in the back of the class. We don't know how intellectually rigorous, academically demanding these religion classes are. But I think it's rather high, much higher than I would expect in this day and age for high school kids to voluntarily decide to go to religion class. That's my impression.
Well, I think, there is a couple of questions, isn't there? I mean, presumably if you're opting out of religion class, there will be some other class in its place.
Yeah, you can either go to Introduction to Physics or Religion.
Yeah.
Which one do you want?
Or you can, there's the paint drying observation class. But I mean, I don't know if it's the case in the UK now, but certainly when way back in the mists of time when I was at school, it was actually compulsory for all schools in England to do at least one lesson per week of some kind of religious education. And as Gabby said earlier, it wasn't necessarily had to be kind of Christian indoctrination. It could be, like introductions to other world religions or all the rest of it. And in fact, as I can recall from my secondary school, it was mostly like ethics and philosophy, actually.
It can be quite interesting.
It was very, very interesting, and it was a cheap O-level as well.
I guess that's the point that I was going to make, actually. Like with Polish kids, it's like, why were these classes brought in? Are they being used for propagandist reasons? Are there some kind of, political brainwashing? Maybe the kids have got wise to it and they're just not into it. And I think if that's the case, then maybe the political leaders need to rethink the idea of forcing mantra down on kids' throat, because the moment you start saying, and this is from personal experience, you have to believe this. If you don't believe this, you're a bad person. You're going to be ostracized. Well, quite frankly, a lot of kids will ostracize themselves if they're sick of being told what to do, what to think, how to think, and why to think it. They're there to learn. They're not there to be preached to.
But just remember, in Catholicism, we quote unquote, you have your Sunday school. So instead of Sunday school, the church basically got in line with the Department of Education here. It's like, let's have our Sunday school actually at school, since all the kids are there. But it's no longer mandatory. But you have to remember.
Sunday school. I thought you people went on Saturdays, Mike.
Okay.
Too much?
It's all right, man. It's
Just dried his feet off after crossing the Red Sea.
Okay. Let's move on. Here's some news. Now,
not news.
What's your name? Josh and Gabby, I'm going to rely on you to kind of help me to understand this because I don't really fully get why this is big news. But we learned this week that Primark, a brand from the UK, is opening a store here in Krakow at Bonarka. Now, if you're into like apparently fast fashion, disposable fashion in the vein of like an H&M or something like that, this is like totally big news. But for me, I really don't care. But a lot of people do, Gabby.
It's worse than H&M, mate. It's worse.
Oh, God, yeah.
So it's like throwaway fashion.
It's the most disposable. You buy it once, you wear it once, you throw it away. It's cheap. You wash it, it stretches, the colour runs. They use horrible...
This is a massively successful business, so...
Yeah, because it's cheap.
Okay, so isn't that a good thing?
No, because it's cheap, it's bad quality, and the amount of exploitation that goes into the Primani business model. They keep denying it, and then they keep getting found out. Like, oh, look, there's another factory with little children sewing garments together or gluing stuff together for pittance, or so many people have died in this other factory.
Okay, so you're not a fan.
Well, I'm not a big fan of fashion anyway. The last time I went shopping was probably 6 months ago, so
Well, that explains a lot. Okay.
Yeah.
Boom. You asked for that, guy. You totally asked for that.
Well, I'm not a big fan.
Cannot complain at all.
I'm not a big fan of...
All right, Josh, give us your experience with Primark.
Well, I mean, yeah, it's definitely. I mean, I mean, to try and kind of coin a Polish term, I suppose it's where Waynek Slobowski would be, and his missus would be going to shop. It's chav clothing, super cheap. I have to say that I slightly disagree with Gabby. That I don't think the quality is always appalling, and I have actually had some items of Primark clothing that in the end I've had to throw away because they just will not wear out and they're horrible.
But you know what though? I haven't been to Bonarka in some time because of the COVID situation. Bonarka, I think, is
they've got
probably...
TK Maxx in Bonarka, which is the other kind of
the lower end of the
discount
market.
chain.
But as far as I remember at Bonarka, much like Galeria Krakowska, they kind of skew towards the higher end. Sure, there's C&A, H&M, whatever, but there are a lot of specialty shops, a lot of exclusive boutique kind of stuff, and maybe something at the lower end, this fast fashion, is what will fit in the Polish market and do well here, because people don't want another Armani, Versace kind of super exclusive shop. They want this. Disposable clothes. That's what people want.
That they go to England from Poland, and the first place they go to is Primark.
I've heard the same thing.
On Oxford Street. Have you ever been to a Primark?
It's crazy.
I don't think so.
Have you been?
I have. Well, the thing is, I have a lot of friends who live in the UK, and Primark is the place you go to when you just rented a new apartment, a new place, and you needed bathrobes, towels.
Oh, so it's more than clothes.
It's more than clothes. It's all like the stuff you need at home.
Home furnishings.
Textiles.
Besides actual furniture. Exactly. And all the stuff that I've seen or bought from there, I'm not going to say they're fantastic, but I'm not going to go to 7 different stores to get the stuff and pay 10 times more.
So I sense an IKEA kind of element going on here.
IKEA thing, but more exactly like say textiles and.
Gabby,
it's kind of like IKEA, but with clothes everywhere.
You're not a fan. We get that. But if you had to bet, do you think the Primark here in Krakow is going to be a success or not?
It's going to be massive. There's going to be queues outside. It's like when the first McDonald's came in. People are going to they love it. They love it. They can't get enough of it.
I'm reminded of, maybe you guys don't know Galeria Serenata as well as I do because it's closer to where I live, but they have, it tilts kind of upscale there. It's a nice place. They have nice shops there. And one of the brands that opened, this is about 2 years ago, and this happened, this is all pre-COVID, was an American brand called Forever 21. And when they opened, it was big news. Oh my God, love it. Been waiting forever for this to come to Poland, and now it's here. And it went out of business. It closed. Right? So success in one market, not necessarily a guarantee of success in another.
Forever 21 has had trouble worldwide, though.
Yeah, maybe.
Primark is a big name just for the value.
Maybe, I guess, maybe it's just easier to succeed at the lower end of the market, I guess. It's just, cheap is what people want.
And also, like, if you pay, I don't know, 10 zloty, 15 zloty for something, if it's bad, you're not going to care, are you?
Exactly.
It was nothing. It's worth nothing, so I don't care.
It's also worth kind of reinforcing the point that although there are many things in Poland that are considerably cheaper than they are elsewhere in Europe, like particularly food and beer, actually clothing is not.
No, you're right.
And so when you have a lower average income, actually spending money on clothing. And of course, you see this in the sense that there's actually an active second-hand clothing market as opposed to the charity shops which we have in the UK where people throw away clothes. Here, people actually sell clothes second-hand.
And I've got to say, Primark, if you're looking for socks, pants, that kind of stuff, why not pay a penny for it, really?
Yeah, when you think about, like, let's say the bargain and the lower end of the clothes market, the kind of stuff you'd get, Tesco, Carrefour, those kind of house brands, you could spend this at a Primark, and tell me if I'm wrong, you can spend basically the same amount of money, but you get the cachet of some cool, hip, foreign brand. And so why not go there?
Primani.
Get it? Just like in America, we call Target. to give it some, upscale kind of.
I like that.
Yeah. Well, let's move on. Speaking of new openings here, Dr. Mike, last week we saw the opening of a new place called Hype Park. Hype Park. It is the designated next big thing when it comes to Krakow's nightlife. It's got the usual bars and food trucks and all the rest of it. Bit of an interesting location on the map, kind of off the mental map for a lot of people, I think. Maybe that'll change over time. But we've talked about this before on our show about how nightlife places kind of grow organically. They don't really grow out of a company saying, okay, everybody go here now to have a beer. That's what's happening here. What do you make of Hype Park?
I think it's basically filling a hole or a niche that was, after Dolnik Winov was gone, people wanted something like that. Plus, with COVID, you weren't allowed to go outside. This place is now in no way built up in the same way as Dolnik Winov was. You don't have buildings, stuff like that. It's more, tents, food trucks, outside, kind of. It's generally being advertised more as like a summer outdoor festival area, which is exactly what people want, especially since you weren't technically allowed to be inside until this weekend. So it just, when it opened up last weekend, it was packed, it was loud. It's up near the Nurotovica Hospital. It's, it's a little north of the train station.
Yeah, it's kind of hard to describe for people who don't know anything outside of the old town here. It's on the north.
Walking distance from the old town, the way like Dolnik Winov was.
If you know where Nova Klepash is, not the Stara one, but the Nova one, it's kind of a bit north of that.
Keep going north of that.
Go north up Duga.
Opposite Rakowiecka Cemetery, the other side of 29 listopada. It's kind of, it's a weird place.
It's in an old railway yard, isn't it?
Something like that, yeah. I mean, the picture, it looks like a nice place, by the way, I have to say.
Close to the prison.
Yeah, basically same neighborhood, just a little further north still.
Close to places where no one wants to live, basically.
But do you see...
Or like a cemetery.
Do you see...
Hospital, prison.
Do you see this doing well? I mean... Again, places like Dolnik Winov, places like Kazimierz, places like Podgorze, it just kind of happens. One bar becomes 3, becomes 5. It takes on kind of energy of its own. But we haven't seen a situation where, there's again, like I said earlier, a designated place to go and have fun. It just seems odd to me.
Well, this is filling that, need right now where there is no place like that that's closed down. You have to also remember that this is the same crew that did Fabrika Club years ago in Podgorze, if you guys remember that. It was like one club, and then like on weekends they would have like, vegan festivals or like old clothes, vintage clothes, vinyl records,
just events,
trucks,
different things going on. Yeah.
Bushy beards.
Basically, and this is like the new hipster hangout
Skinny
kind of
jeans.
place as well.
No, skinny jeans are out, John.
Oh, sorry.
Baggies now.
That's so 2019. Sorry, I'm out of touch now.
Be happy the baggies.
Anybody got any plans to go see Hype Park?
Yeah, I did. But
you've been there?
No, I know. I was going to go, and then I heard that there were queues to get in, and I thought, you know what, allow that.
Yeah.
I think I'll just leave it on.
A lot of that on social media. A lot of people posting pics of the line still waiting to get in. So you won't stand in line to buy a beer.
Do I look like the kind of girl that would stand?
Do you want me to answer that, honestly?
to buy
you asked for that.
People are getting drunk already waiting in line to get in because you're not allowed to bring in your own alcohol. So people are drinking their own alcohol before they got in there, to save money. So that made things.
So what's the status on Dolnik Winov, by the way? Is it like
it left a big hole in?
But it's done. It's like done.
Yeah. It's gutted and done.
Right. Well, anyway, good luck to Hyde Park. Actually, I did reach out to them on Facebook to see if somebody from their organization or whatever you call it wanted to come on our show, and we're in touch with them. So maybe in the coming weeks, somebody from Hyde Park will come here in person and tell us all about everything you can do there. And maybe Gabby won't have to stand in line when she goes.
I hope not.
We'll see. Let's move on to some new laws coming into effect this week. I think we talked about it several months ago when they were first proposed. having to do with pedestrian behavior at crosswalks and driver behavior when it comes to tailgating and going back to pedestrians wearing headphones and things like this. Lots of things are illegal that were not illegal before, trying to enforce some good behavior on both the drivers and pedestrians. Guys, good intentions behind this, but kind of hard to imagine effective enforcement of things like tailgating and not listening to headphones as you cross a street.
Oh, yeah, because the new tailgating laws basically say that when you're on an expressway or a highway, you have to be a minimum half the distance as the speed you're going. So if you're going 100 kilometers an hour, then you have to have at least 50 meters between you and the vehicle in front of you. We'll see how that works out.
How do you enforce that?
It will be difficult, but I know Poland is a tailgating crazy country, so I'm glad that this was... Thing is, the law always said you had to keep a safe distance. Now they just kind of put like a numerical value to it, which we'll see if the cops can help them enforce them with not.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea to put a numerical value to it.
But the question was as well, like, well, if I want to overtake, I have to get closer anyway. So the law was a little confusing in that sense. Crosswalk laws, zebra crossing laws have changed because right now the law used to say that the pedestrian has the right of way when he's crossing. But what about a pedestrian waiting to cross? That makes it kind of awkward. So the cars can zip by at 50 kilometers an hour until the pedestrian is literally in front of him. Then the pedestrian has the right of way. So pedestrians were a little uncomfortable of getting onto the crosswalk. Then now the law says that if you are in the area of the crosswalk expecting to cross, the driver has to stop or let you go past.
Again, how do you enforce this?
We'll see. Well, we'll see what happens over the next couple of weeks. Though the one law that kind of annoyed me about this was that, I understand the law also says pedestrians are not allowed to use their phone when they're crossing. It makes sense. Don't look down at your phone. You have to pay attention to what's going around you. But they also said you can't have headphones or earphones on while you're crossing. I was like, well, I might not be listening to music, so I have to take them out visibly when I'm crossing.
Yeah, how does that work?
I'm curious to see how that's going to be enforced.
I think a lot of this isn't going to be about enforcement, but what is taught to the next generation of drivers. Like, that's where it comes in. If you're taught that you have to stop for someone that's waiting at a pedestrian crossing and you won't pass your test if you don't do that, then you're going to start doing it, and that's a habit that gets built up in the kind of
changing the culture, kind of.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's a good thing, actually, because we've all been there waiting to cross, and they've all been. It's got better over the years. It has. When I first came to Poland, there was no way anyone would stop for you. It's getting better, but if
that has improved over the last years. I mean, when I first came to Poland in the late '90s, a crosswalk meant nothing. I could stand for 30 minutes, cars just zooming by.
Shaving.
When I was in the UK,
you have to make them stop.
In the UK, I look in the general direction of a crosswalk out the window, and cars would stop. And now in Poland, it's kind of in between, which I think is a little awkward because I walk up to a crosswalk and cars will usually slow down or stop, so I feel safe. But I still know that there could be that odd car that won't stop and speed by. So I'm still not confident when I'm at a crosswalk. Will I be killed, or will I, live to see another day?
But if you're killed, then he will end up in jug for the.
Oh, that makes me feel so much goddamn better. Yeah.
And if it's a dual carriageway, that makes it even more complicated because one lane might stop, but the other lane is going to keep zooming past you because they can't see you.
It's complicated.
It gets complicated. So I think it's a good thing with. Pedestrians might not be so easy because you don't need to pass a test to be a pedestrian, do you?
I'm with you on the headphones there, Mike, because when I go outside, most of the time I keep headphones on I listen to stuff all the time when I'm outside, and I'm not going to take them out of my ears just because I'm crossing the street. So I'll turn it off. I almost always turn my I was going to say iPod. People don't listen to iPods anymore, but I do. Anyway, I turn it off when I cross the street for safety reasons, but I don't take them out of my ears. I mean, am I in trouble for that? Is that breaking the law?
Technically, that could be a fine, but I'm assuming police officers, if they see that you stopped, you looked both ways, and you waited for a good moment to cross, then they're not going to bother you. If they see that you're distracted, because the whole concept is that the pedestrian should not be distracted when he's crossing the roadway, that he should be
fine, makes sense.
So if you're paying attention, okay, no issue. But if you're not paying attention...
Well, also, there's the fact that the police are actually out to get you, John. I mean, you personally,
that's
not people
true.
in general.
I know that.
And it now gives them probable cause.
I know that. It's been a fact. Yeah. Absolute fact. Let's move on, Josh. This is for you because this is kind of your thing. We learned last week that Poland set new records when it comes to the generation of solar power. I won't bother you with the numbers because they don't matter. I don't understand them anyway. But it was a huge jump.
We haven't had any sun this year.
Yeah, I know, exactly. It was a huge jump over previous production. I guess the idea of Poland as a solar power powerhouse is kind of a joke. But I mean, and maybe the part of this. The reason for the big jump is a low baseline, of course, but is solar power ever really going to address a significant portion of our power needs?
No, of course it's not, because for as long as we don't have any effective means of storing electricity, which we don't, then it's what's called kind of like dispatchable load, and solar is utterly unpredictable. It goes up and down the whole time, and as any half-competent power grid engineer would tell you, what you need is kind of consistent and the ability, consistent delivery of current, and also the ability to ramp it up at times of peak demand, such as the advert break in the middle of Coronation Street.
Did the article say where these are being built? Is it private houses or is it like solar panel fields?
No, kind of done on an industrial scale, yeah.
But it's true that it's become much more popular in households right now. Exactly. That a lot of people are building, and the law basically
says... It might be because of tax incentives.
Exactly. The law basically says now that if you build like photovoltaic solar panels in your home, the power companies, any electricity that you're producing, have to take that into their system and reimburse you for that.
So it's worth it.
So, for the personal consumer, it's worth it. For the producers of energy on a large scale, not really. It makes things complicated, and it means that they're getting electricity when they don't necessarily need electricity. They don't have anywhere to, quote-unquote, put it. So they can just, it's wasted as heat. It's sent off to other countries, or it's just, dispatched of because they don't need it at that moment. But then when you need electricity, you get it free from the energy companies because you gave them that electricity during the daytime because there was sun during that day when you weren't using it.
Yeah, it's this concept of the peak times when you're using energy. When you come home from work, you make a cup of coffee, you watch TV, you plug your laptop in. That's when people are using the energy and that's when they're consuming it. But if you put it onto the grid at another time, the company has to recompensate you, but you're still... because you're effectively producing it for them, so there's a compensation. But you're right, we need a better storage system for sure. I think if there was a good storage system, it might be a
that's but that's absolutely a game changer. But I mean, I think this is the thing that is consistently and constantly overlooked in a lot of the the alternative and the so-called renewable energy kind of debates, is that because you cannot store electricity, and I repeat that emphatically, you cannot. People talk about massive batteries. I think even Elon Musk did some experiment in Australia with an enormous battery, and it's capable of holding on to something like 0.5 gigawatt for a day. And it's all should be worth pointing out that a battery of that size is like an enormous potential bomb as well. Yeah. Energy is
use it immediately or it's gone. Basically, I mean that's the way.
It's more or less the case. I mean, really, the only thing with our current kind of understanding of physics, etc., that is doable but still is impractical is what we call like when you lift water up to a great height and then you can release it as hydroelectricity, because that actually is it's kind of kinetic energy, if you like. You have a high weight of something a long way above ground, and then it's released. That energy is kind of converted.
But still, for political reasons, for ideological reasons, if you were to go to the Polish government or the EU and say you have some kind of idea based on, tick the right buzzwords, green energy and renewable energy and solar power and things like this, they'll throw cash at you, regardless of the efficiency of the technology that you're proposing. So it's just, this is where science kind of conflicts with ideology. And science doesn't always win.
I mean, it might be an idea to kind of get people involved if there's you call it like a demand, right? There's a demand on energy. If people can switch on their solar panels when the demand's high, it means that the energy station doesn't need to do it. So that's one way.
Yeah, but wait. I mean, tell me if I'm missing something here.
Yeah,
but if Portugal and Spain and Italy and Greece are not powerhouses in this field already, What hope does Poland have?
They don't have angled roofs.
I mean, really, what am I missing here? What am I missing? Well, okay, they could set that up easily. I mean, if the sunniest parts of Europe don't already produce massive amounts of free power, how are we going to make it happen here?
Well, I mean, of course, the great. I mean, if you've ever driven in any part of Germany in the last, I don't know, 10, 15 years, it is absolutely the whole of Germany is kind of splattered with windmills.
Yep.
And Germany has, without making any adjustments, has the highest per unit domestic electricity cost in the world.
And this is taking into account other government subsidies as well, their tax credits. They switched over, quote unquote, to like renewable energies over the last few years, especially when they got rid of the nuclear power plants. It's cost them €1 trillion, basically. And their energy costs have increased. Their CO2 output has increased over this time.
But they have good intentions, Mike.
Exactly.
They want to save the planet, unlike you.
Always trust the Germans.
All right, let's move on to one more thing about this is local news back here in Krakow, of course. We learned this week that the city government is leaning towards approving the construction of 10 kilometers of underground tunnels at a bargain basement cost of only 5 billion. What is billion? That's a lot of money. 5 billion.
As opposed to what? Overground tunnels.
Yeah. This comes as part of what is actually a pretty significant expansion of the city's tram network, mostly in the northern direction for the moment. A spur of the track that's currently on Mogilska that'll go north along Meissnera in the direction of the Aquapark, Park Wodny, and Multikino. They're building right now. They're building an extension of the line around Opolska that's going to go to the northern part of the city, a neighborhood whose name I've forgotten. Sorry about that. And anyway, these tunnels are supposed to be all over the city. And some people are looking at this as kind of a deceptive trick. They see it as kind of a backdoor way to achieve the dream of some of getting a metro here. So the tunnels, of course, are intended for trams, the existing tram network. But the idea is that they'll build these tunnels and somebody will say, oh, you know what? As long as we've got these tunnels, let's just build a metro here and extend the tunnels. And so a bit of a conspiracy theory, maybe. I don't know. Gabby, I'm 1,000% against the construction of a metro system in Krakow. Where do you stand on this?
Well, I don't know if I'm for or against, but I don't think it's a conspiracy theory for sure. The first tunnels of the London Underground were cut and cover, which is, I presume, what they're expecting to do, which is you dig a trench and then you lay the lines and then you cover it back up and then you have a tunnel.
Not sure the method involved here, but maybe.
I presume it's that because it's the cheapest way of doing it rather than boring a hole.
Yeah, because tunneling is crazy expensive.
Yeah, it's crazy expensive. And the cheapest way is exactly what they've done on the Trasse Łagiewniki, which is that they've cut and covered. Right? So you cut it, you cover it, and then it's a tunnel.
Right.
So it's a metro system, but not as we know it. You know, it is a basic metro system, essentially, and you could call it that if you wanted to, but it runs just under the road surface, so it's not like the Northern Line in London or the subway in New York where it's bored right under it. It's just
actually the subway in New York is very shallow. That's all cut and cover. Yeah,
is that all cut?
Dr. Mike, where do you stand on this?
I have very mixed feelings about the idea of a metro. I like the idea of a metro, but I think it makes no sense. What we're talking about right now is actually the result of the feasibility study that the city and Majchrowski asked for, because a few years ago, basically during these budget referendum, the voters said that they want a metro in the city. Majchrowski, said well, that's not a great idea. It's really expensive. But let's have a feasibility study. And the feasibility study has basically said okay, a full-blown metro makes no sense in Krakow, but this tram system, which would be partially covered or cut and actually what you were saying, cut and covered. There is an argument for that, and that's basically what is being presented here right now. So it will go through the center of town, underground, direction of Nowa Huta, and like you were saying,
it sounds like a semantic thing. We're arguing about words here, not really
No, because it's a whole different type of construction.
And then what you would have is actually trams underground, not a metro system, which is a different type of rail than light rail. It is cheaper.
De facto, it seems like the same thing.
It's kind of, think of what you have going under the train station right now of the tram.
Yeah, 1 or 2 underground stops.
Yeah. So that's what they're saying. It'll be just a few underground stops in the busiest area, and then it'll go back overground as well. So, but basically, it'll be connecting Bronowice in that area with Nowa Huta, with several kilometers of that covered tracks.
People on the south side of town get screwed when it comes to trams.
Well, yeah, because it's built up. That's why. The whole point of cut and cover is you've got a lot of land that you can excavate and then put the thing, and it's green. It it stays green. The sound is shielded. You don't get the noise. You get, you can build a park on top of it if you wanted to, or houses if you wanted to. You can't do that in the south of Krakow because it's too built up already.
Yeah, fair enough. But I'm all for expanding the tram network. I mean, especially when you look at the new apartments and new neighborhoods popping up everywhere. It's kind of obvious that the existing network is kind of insufficient, to say the least. But it takes time and a lot of money. But we'll see how it turns out. One more thing for this week, we try to finish on something on the lighter side. Not much in that way in this week's news. Let's talk about fruits. Cherries and strawberries. I very prematurely called the beginning of strawberry season like a month ago. Now, in my defense, the weather has been shocking, and the weather has delayed the arrival of ripe strawberries for about a month. But they finally made it to market this week, and the prices are unbelievable. A combination of things: the weather, of course, the COVID situation, transport. Anyway, people are charging up to 45, 50 zlotys a kilo for this kind of thing, which sounds like a lot of money, double, maybe triple the price you would expect under normal circumstances. Is anybody here a big cherry or strawberry fan?
I like cherries. I don't like strawberries.
I'll be honest. In Polish, this is like a linguistic thing. Like in Polish, you say like czereśnie and wiśnia, and I could never really understand in English which one is which.
Wiśnia is called a morello cherry.
Morello?
Yeah.
Two different kinds of cherries?
Yeah, and the other cherry
Yeah, so for me, it's like when I say in English cherry, and then somebody in Poland tells me a wiśnia or a czereśnie. For me, it's like it's the same thing.
What's the difference?
Wiśnia is sour. It's a sour cherry.
And one's like a dessert.
And the other one's the sweet one. So one of the ones, the cherries, the czereśnie, is what you will find in your cocktail glass. And the wiśnia is probably something that you'll find in a cake because it's a bit more
Why would you want a sour cherry?
Because it gives you the,
Can you repeat that, please?
No.
That popping sound.
Yeah.
What's that?
Well, you've all sucked on a sour cherry.
All right, two different kinds of cherries.
People eat grapefruits, don't they?
Exactly.
Nobody's willing to fork over 45 zlotys, 50 zlotys a kilo.
No.
It's kind of an interesting, the difference between the expression mouth-watering and eye-watering, isn't it?
Well, definitely a good illustration of supply and demand. I mean, this is what it costs to supply, and so this is what it costs to buy, and so we'll see how long that lasts. But if nobody buys at 45, the price has to come down. But yeah, this year, I guess, because of the weather, which is shocking, by the way.
It's the weather. It's
this is the
really
worst
bad.
April, May I can remember here. I mean, here we are today. Well, there's like 3 days left in this month, and what is it? 12 degrees, 14 degrees, and raining. It's pathetic. But
And plus the logistics have been completely screwed up because of COVID.
Totally.
So like production, other countries isn't flowing in and out.
But under a normal year, my point is, in a normal year, you would see strawberries everywhere outside. I mean, sidewalk vendors and whatnot, and obviously outdoor markets just flooded mountains of beautiful red strawberries. But this year, not so much.
Strawberries don't like the rain.
This is
They
true.
don't like the rain. They rot in the field.
This is true.
There's not
And
enough
a lot of rain this year. Oh my God, it's been terrible. Well, on that note, on that red fruity note, we'll bring things to a close. KrakCast.pl is the website, of course. Go there and check out all of our back episodes. Thanks for listening, everybody, and we'll see you next week on the news.